That's bad. That's horrible.
Time to do it again.
Good morning.
Good morning.
There you go. I knew you were with me. Good morning. If you've not done so, we invite you to take your white booklet here on the inside, pass that around. If you're a guest or visitor with us, a very warm welcome to you. We hope that you're inspired today. There's also a prayer request cards, those orange cards in there. If you'd like to fill those out legibly, put the prayer request into the offering plate as it comes around, and we'll share it later in our service. We do want to, we're very excited today to have Mikah Meyer with us. You're going to hear more about his story in a moment, but I'm here to tell you, you are going to be inspired and blessed not only by his voice of singing, but his message. So Mikah, would you stand up and let us welcome you one more time? As part of that journey, you have he does this ministry. He doesn't do it for any charge. He just comes, and however your gifts are inspired to have him here, we welcome those. You're welcome to leave a gift if you'd like to do so. There's envelopes in the pews. Please mark on there Mikah Meyer. That'll be dedicated towards Micah's ministry that he does. As I said in the first service, he sings and preaches for his dinner. So we want to make sure that we support him as best we can. There's also a box out in the hallway too. If you need some time to process that, please do that. But I know you're going to be inspired, so think about that gift and how we can support his ministry that you're going to hear about in a few moments. We have a few things we'd like to share with you. Where'd Teresa go? Teresa, come on up and share us about the auction. It's going well. I'm a little bit mad because I keep bidding on the chainsaw, and somebody keeps overbidding. Who's bidding against me on the chainsaw?
Don't mess up.
You're out of here, man. So, Teresa, take it away.
Oh, okay, real quick. So the auction is still running. It closes tomorrow night at 6 p.m., but our numbers are around 200 or so, our auction items. So you've got a little bit of time past that to bid. You need to go online to OrinocoAuction.com, register to bid if you haven't. Go check those things out. There's some great things there. We need to raise a lot more money. So please go online. You can register. If you need help, get a hold of me, and I will be happy to help you get registered.
Good. Thank you, Teresa, for that. Those funds go to help support our ministry and mission of the church. So please be generous in your giving. It's a lot of fun. Thanks for everybody who's donated for that. Race Forward is Tuesdays at 7 o'clock. Come and join us in the dwelling. Ruth will be gone this week, but Marie is going to be leading that group this time. So come and join us on Tuesdays at 7 o'clock. Miriam Ministry, they don't want to meet here in the church. They want to go to Baker Square. Why?
Good food.
Hello, it's free pie. So if you're a woman in the church like to go to Baker Square North up off of 52 and join them for their ministry, youth ministry.
Just a quick reminder that Wednesdays are our regular meeting now for 6th through 12th grade youth. We're all meeting here Wednesdays. Come at 5-ish or so to come help make dinner, or come at 6 to eat, and then go downstairs for fellowship and conversation time. This week I think we're going to do grilled cheese, so it'll be a fun one.
Good, thank you for that. Next Sunday is our semi-annual meeting, 9:45 Fellowship Hall. Come and join us for that. We'll be talking the fun stuff of budget. Budget. They're still bad, aren't they? Anyhow, so now it's been budget. We're going to be electing our new council members. Well, they're always fun meetings, so come and join us for that. Also, Hawthorne Help needs your help with some body lotion and some body wash.
Yes, please make sure this is a really short one. So if you haven't had a chance to pick up your lotion or body wash and you'd like to help them out, please make sure and do that. Sunday is the last pickup day. It's only a 2-week drive. So if you have some of that you can get from the store and bring it here and donate, that would be great. This goes to people who are needing assistance, and federal assistance doesn't cover things like body wash, body lotion. Those are things that we all need. So please make sure that you are able to donate, bring in some, bring in a few, go grocery shopping, pick up a bottle. It's out in the hallway, and we would love to take it to them as a big gift. So thank you.
Awesome, thank you. We just want to make one announcement. We will be celebrating the life of Tammy Ryder's father this afternoon at 2 o'clock here at the church, so prayers for Tammy. Also, this coming Saturday is Tom DeYoung's aunt, Lil, and we'll be celebrating her life at 11 o'clock on Saturday at Samaritan Bethany. So just prayers for those two families, if you would. I just want to share with you as we start our time together, our scripture. Mike, if you'd get ready to get us into worship today, we're going to start with this very powerful passage from Luke chapter 4. And these words, I think, really will speak to us throughout our morning together. I know in the first service, I was drawn to this as I heard Micah's message and his voice, where Luke 4 says this: God's Spirit is on me. God has chosen me to preach and to sing, the message of good news to the poor. God has sent me to announce pardon and forgiveness and grace to prisoners and recovery of sight to the blind. God has set all those who are burdened to be free and to announce this is God's year to act. My friends, it is our time to share the good news as God calls us together on this. Wow. He did that at 8:30 in the morning, too. Let me tell you. It is so great to have Mike here. You're going to hear more about that later on. I just wanted to start in a moment of prayer. Thank you again for being with us. I just got to say, I saw his video about a year and a half ago, just as streaming around online, and I said, man, we got to get him here. It took a year and a half, but thank God he is here. So let's join together in prayer. God, for this day that you've given us, this opportunity just to gather, to celebrate, to experience your love in amazing ways. We just thank you for being your presence among us. For all who have gathered on this day, whether longtime members or just new people here for the first time, we give thanks because in this community all are welcomed. And here in this place and time, we all celebrate one God together in one spirit. So be with us as we come together, as we celebrate that good news of love and mercy, compassion and grace, acceptance, inclusion for all the people. We're going to say that and pray that and preach that and sing it till all the world hears. So God, be with us this day. Bind us together in your love and your spirit as we come together in one voice, praying together the prayer which Jesus first taught. Our Creator,
who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our sins, as we forgive those who sin against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, power, and the glory forever.
we're going to invite you to please rise if you're able to come together and celebrate what God is doing here in this time and place. Let God touch your soul.
Good morning, everybody. Come on over, guys. Come on up. Come on up now. Good morning. How are you this morning? Having a good day? Benjamin's ready. We're ready to roll. I love it. This morning, I wanted to talk a little bit about that reading that Pastor Paul started our worship service this morning, called to do some really amazing things, to release captives and restore sight are some pretty amazingly heroic things, right? Would you say that that's pretty hard to do? Maybe there's people in our community, though, that might do those things. Do any of you know any doctors? I think we might know a lot of doctors. You think you might know some nurses out there? There might be some nurses. Yeah? Yeah, you haven't seen a nurse? If you're a nurse or have been a nurse, stand up. Okay, you've seen a nurse. It's really true. We have actually a lot of doctors and nurses and techs and all kinds of medical people in our community. And they do some pretty miraculous things as well. And so in our reading this morning, we were called to do these really amazing things. And so I want to know what you think you could do that would be an amazing thing. What do you think there's something that you could do, Rudy, that would be amazing? That would be miraculous? Going for a trip? That could be miraculous, yeah. Because you could have a really good trip, and then you could share that with people, right? In fact, Mikah's here to do a little bit of that today. He's going on a big trip, and he's sharing that with us today. What are other things that we could do that would be miraculous? What? Catching a robber. Yeah. Restoring justice. Yeah. Definitely that would be a wonderful thing to do because it helps someone out. So what we're being asked to do, what do you think, Viv? Helping someone even if there's no one around to tell? Right. To being truthful and honest and loving and caring in everything we do. These are amazing things that we are able to do and that we can do because we are loved people. So this week, I want you to go out and think about all of the things that you can do the wise things that you can do. Last week we talked a lot about wisdom being something you know. Well, the wisdom is actually also the doing, too. Going out into the world and doing something amazing and miraculous and something you never thought you could do. What do you think, Rudy? You're just checking which camera. What do you think? Cleaning up litter, absolutely. What else do you think? Stopping pollution, now that would be amazing. That would be wonderful. I really hope that we can all work towards that, actually, so that we can show our world that we care about it. So this week, you're going to go out and you're going to think about some really good actions that you can do. Will you do that for me?
Like playing, like climbing up a tree, but maybe that wasn't Nerf gun.
Probably not. Let's try something else.
No, I said Nerf gun.
Uh-huh. Will you guys pray with me? Dear God, thank you for all we have to give and all we have that we can do. Be with us. Amen.
We do give thanks for all the gifts that God has blessed us with. And we're going to invite Mikah to sing another song for us to inspire us in our giving, but to be mindful of how God moves through us and with us and to us each and every day. So let's give this day according to the blessings we first received from God.
Will you be with me in prayer? God, we give you great thanks for these gifts. Musical, the gifts of our hands, the gifts of our hearts, the gift of our voice, the gift of this voice. We give you great thanks this day and celebrate all that we are in community. Amen.
Well, good morning, PCUCC. It is such a pleasure to be here with you. I should start out by thanking you, or explaining something, excuse me. If I walked up today and you expected to hear something different than you saw, that is because I am a countertenor. And for those of you unfamiliar with the term, a countertenor is essentially a male alto or a male soprano. The voice type goes back to the days before women were allowed to sing on stage or in church, and thus men had to sing all parts of the SATB choir that we now know today. So if I sounded a little different than you expected this morning, wake up, it's time for church. Let's get it started. But am I too close to this mic? Well, it is a pleasure to be here with you today and to sharing a ministry of music. I am a pastor's kid. Are any other pastor's kids in the congregation? You've survived as well. Congrats. I'm actually told that my first act of ministry, fittingly, was through art. And that was like a good Christian sitting in the back pew. As a 3-year-old, I got a hold of a marker while my father was preaching the sermon and proceeded to draw on the carpet underneath all the pews all the way up to him at the pulpit while he was preaching the sermon. So I see you've planned ahead today and just had me preach because you have really nice carpet. So smart decision on your point. In addition to being a pastor's kid and growing up in the church, my dad is a large part of the reason why I'm here with you today. I think we're getting feedback still. Should I walk over here? My dad is a large part of the reason why I'm here today with you because when I was 19 years old, he passed away from esophageal cancer. Now, for a good Nebraskan Midwesterner who had already started saving for my retirement in high school, my dad's passing changed everything for me. I was raised and told that you are born, you go to school, you go to college where you meet your spouse, you get a job, and then when you turn 65, you get to do those things that take more than 2 weeks vacation. And yet, when I saw my dad pass away at age 58, losing out on that American ideal, I realized that that was not the case for everyone. Now, are there any clergy in the audience? We've got one for sure. You got another one. Okay. You'll have to tell me if this was a common backup career that they pushed in seminary or not. But my dad often said if he hadn't been a pastor, he probably would have been a trucker. I'm getting a shake. I don't know if it was the unlimited amount of sunflower seeds he could eat and throw on the floor, if it was the wind in his hair, or just really bad late night talk radio. But whatever it was, my father loved to drive. So much so that when we would take our annual family vacations from Nebraska to Florida, a 28-hour drive, he would do the entire thing straight through, all by himself, with a big grin on his face. And so a few days after his funeral, this being the first encounter I'd ever had of the death of someone close to me, and quite honestly, not knowing how to grieve, not knowing how to process it, I did the only thing that made any sense, and I climbed into his hail-battered Hyundai Elantra and took my first ever independent road trip to the glamorous locations of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and Rochester, Minnesota. And while the locations might not be glamorous by travel agent standards, for me, it was exactly what I needed to process my dad's passing. It took me out of Lincoln, Nebraska, a town that for 3 years had been nothing but chemo treatments, radiation, and surgeries, and now reeked of cancer and death, and put me physically into new spaces that I believe allowed God to work on those other spaces in my heart and mind and start the process of healing in a way that I don't think would have happened otherwise. Realizing the unique power of this initial road trip, I made a vow to myself while driving back across Iowa that for the rest of my life, around the time of my father's passing, April 29th, I would take a road trip. Something to honor the road trips he would no longer get, to honor the road trips we wouldn't get together, but also to honor the road trips that I might never get if I pass away before 65 as well. Now, over the years, these road trips went a little further beyond Sioux Falls and Rochester. And as I traveled around the country and met people and told them why I was in their town, they shared with me a realization, a confirmation that most of my elders who I met would confirm this reason I was doing this road trip and share that indeed life is short, tomorrow's not guaranteed, and we don't always get the time we think we'll have to spend with people we care about or to pursue our dreams. So we should live intentionally and passionately while we have life on earth. While this was a message my elders seemed to know quite clearly, my peers seemed to feel a little different. We all thought we were going to live forever, or at least until 80. And so as I went throughout my 20s, I thought there's got to be something I can do to share this message that I've learned in a way with the world that is less hard than I had to learn it. And so I decided that when I turned 30, I would take my annual road trip, and instead of a week-long trip, I would do something crazy. I would do something so absolutely insane that it would grab the world's attention and shake them to hear this message in ways they might not otherwise. And so at age 30, on April 29th, 2016, the 11th anniversary of my father's passing, I moved all my life's belongings into a white windowless cargo van down by the river and committed to living in that van for the following coming 3 years as I would drive around America and attempt to set a world record as the youngest person to visit all 417 U.S. National Park Service sites and get the world's attention that way. I'm happy to share that my steed, Vanny McVanface, has made it to Rochester and is in your parking lot today after 2.5 years on the road. That has taken me to touch every state thus far and to reach 357 of those 417 sites, leaving 60 parks and about 8 months to go before I ended this journey on April 29th, 2019. I'm also happy to share that this goal of spreading this message has been a success in the sense that I have done over 1,000 interviews, ranging from my hometown Nebraska newspaper to New Zealand's largest news source to KIMT was here earlier. If you want to see your church on the news tonight, it's going to be on it. And each one of those stories has allowed me to share this message inspired by my dad's passing, this carpe diem ideal that we all cherish people while we have them, cherish time while we have it. It's interesting, though, this journey that began as a national parks odyssey to get the world's attention also has another part that has evolved while on the road. And it's something that also started when I was 19. Not only was that the year that I lost my father, but 19 was the age that I was when for the first time in my life, I met an openly gay adult. Growing up in Nebraska, the son of a well-known minister, my exposure to the LGBT community was what I saw on TV and read in the newspaper, which taught me 3 very important lessons. Number 1, all gay men grow up and become drag queens. Number 2, the LGBT community spends the entire year plotting how to wear as little clothes as possible on a float downtown. And the third message I got, perhaps the one that I got loudest and clearest of all, was that anyone who was LGBT was going to hell. And there was nothing they could do to stop that. Now imagine my surprise when I leave Lincoln, Nebraska, go to college at the University of Memphis, show up to my first day's class, and meet my male professor and his male partner. And I was looking at them dressed in long pants and a button-down shirt and sweater vests, and it was about 100 degrees in Memphis that August day, and I thought, you guys are really missing a great Speedo opportunity here. And as I watched them interact with people, they were so traditionally masculine, I thought, well, I feel really bad for you because this weekend is going to be rough. You're going to make no money because you're the worst drag queens I've ever seen in my life. And after class, I saw them walk off and climb into a Lexus convertible together, and I thought, what? I don't know any deviants that can afford a Lexus convertible. And from that first interaction, that first meeting with someone who lived openly and authentically as they were, my stereotypes started to change. And as a result, I became the most annoying student at my campus ministry. Because every day I'd talk to another LGBT person and hear their stories and their lived experiences, and I would go to my campus pastor and say, Pastor, this is what someone told me, but this is what I've heard, and this is what I read, but then this thing said this, and I don't understand this, and I asked questions and questions of other people and of myself, until one day I was reading the Bible, I had a revelation. I looked around at my classmates, of which over 50% were African American, and realized that nobody ever said that they were going to hell because they were black. At the same time, I had a relative who was diagnosed as bipolar, what during biblical times we might say meant she had a demon in her. And yet nobody in my family said that she was going to hell for being bipolar. And as much as we like to make fun of my youngest sister for being left-handed, I couldn't remember for the life of me a time when someone had said she was going to hell for being left-handed. Because what all those three things share in common is that no one chooses those traits about themselves. And in that moment, I realized that as much as I had tried for over 2 decades to deny, to pray away, and to fix it, that I was gay and that I hadn't chosen it. So how could God send me to hell for that? Now, the fascinating thing about Memphis, Tennessee is it is squarely in the Bible Belt. And so as I looked around to my peers to figure out how to come out, I saw 2 examples. In a city like Memphis, everyone is Christian. You're either a believer, you go to church, or you're what I like to call a secular Christian. You kind of claim it as your cultural identity, because if you don't, you'll be ostracized and you won't be respected or have friends in the communities easily. And so I saw some of my peers say, well, I'm Christian, but the church told me I can't be gay and Christian, so I'm just going to abandon everything they've ever said, and in fact, I'm going to do the opposite, because if they lied about that, what else have they lied to me about? On the other side, I saw friends who said, well, I'm Christian, but I figured out this other part about myself, but I am not allowed to be gay and Christian, so I'm going to stay in the closet and marry someone of the opposite gender. And then here I was in the middle, having spent 20-some years working through who I was and finally accepting it, but also knowing that I had a place and an identity in the church because my artwork was still on the carpet. But yet, as I looked around and tried to find someone like me, I didn't see anyone like me. There's an amazing quote that I heard civil rights leader Marian Wright Edelman preach, and she said, "It's hard to be what you can't see." When I heard her say that, she was talking about African American male teachers and the need for more to go into the profession to show others a role model they'd never seen otherwise. And when I heard her say that, everything clicked. I realized I was that person who was struggling to be who I was because I didn't see anyone like me. And so what I did with my annual road trips was that I added a secret mission. Anywhere I went over the country, I was going to find another gay Christian. Now, I should preface this next part of my sermon by saying that there's absolutely nothing wrong with being in your 50s, 60s, or 70s. However, when I finally started meeting some LGBT Christians in my mid-20s, they were all in their 50s, 60s, and 70s. And I just desperately wanted to find someone like me, so I knew that I fit into the church somewhere. After driving around the country and not finding other young adult LGBT Christians, I did the only thing any industrious Midwesterner would do. I moved to Washington, D.C. to take a job at the National Cathedral, singing with their choirs. And while I was there, I thought, well, if I have driven around the country and can't find these young adult LGBT Christians, I'll just bring them to me. And so I started a group with the explicit mission of reaching out to young adult LGBT Christians, and I named it Queer for Christ because I had heard of groups that were called Reconciling Works, or More Light Presbyterians, or Affirmation, or Reconciling Ministries Networks, and I thought, do you have a clue what they stand for if you aren't already in the know? And so I wanted something that right away in your face told you, this group is for LGBTQIA through Z people. And even if the term Christian is haunting you, if that's a pejorative in your world, you can just be for Christ. You can be pro-Jesus. And this space is for you. I'm happy to share that what started at age 26 as a group of the guy you see in front of you in a shiny blue suit, by the time I left at age 30 for this National Parks journey, Queer for Christ had grown to over 400 young adult LGBT Christians. And because it was Washington, D.C., and people came to work for their representatives, there were members from Minnesota, there were members from Florida, there were members from Kansas, but there were also people who'd come to work for their embassies or international nonprofits and were from Madagascar and China and South Africa. And they had grown up in the Lutheran church like me. They had grown up UCC. They had grown up Methodist. They'd grown up Episcopalian. They were African Methodist Episcopalian. They were Catholic. They were Baptist. They were Quaker. They were Mormon. They were Jehovah's Witness. You name it. We had one of every denomination and seemingly from everywhere around the world. And yet, no matter what our backgrounds were, no matter what our denominational differences or geographical differences were, everyone that came to that group shared a story. And it was the same story. I grew up feeling unwanted by my church. I grew up feeling unwanted by my faith. And I grew up feeling unwanted by my God. Now, a lesson for the kids in the congregation today. The internet does not disappear. You see, I had started this group, Queer for Christ, and was advertising it online, and we had tons of events, and was writing articles on the Huffington Post about it. And then when I started this national parks trip, I wished I hadn't done any of that. Because when I began this journey, I reached out to national park experts, and I said, hey, I've been planning this trip for my 20s. I've been saving up. Here's how much I've saved. Can I pull this off? And they said, I think you raised about a fifth of what it'll take to do it. And I thought, okay, well, I'll just get corporate sponsors, or I'll crowdfund on the internet like any millennial. And yet, as I started reaching out to companies, I would get very, very far speaking with people I had no business speaking to, CMOs and CEOs. And yet, always at the last minute, it would fall through. And I thought, well, they must have Googled me. And being associated with a gay man or a gay Christian is just too much for 2016. And so I thought, well, my only option now is to crowdfund. So if I'm going to stay alive on this trip, every interview I do, I cannot let them know I'm gay. I cannot let them know I'm Christian, because America will just be offended, and there's no way they will support this gay Christian doing this. And so I started my journey and went about sharing the parks and my dad, and that was simple enough. Until one day I got an Instagram message. And it was about 9 months into my journey, and this message came from someone who said, I'm 15 years old, I go to a private Baptist school in Texas, and I'm not out of the closet to anyone. But I was Googling you, and I read about your group, Queer for Christ. And I just wanted to thank you, because now I know that when I grow up, I can become ordinary. He said, and then I found your Instagram, and I see that you're setting world records. And now I also know that when I grow up, I can become extraordinary. And it was God sending me a lightning bolt saying, Micah, I am giving you an average of 1 media piece per day, over 1,000 on this parks journey. Do you think you could use that media attention to be for that boy, for your friends from around the world, and for 10-year-old you that really had a hard time being themselves because they didn't see themselves? And at that moment, it all made sense. I was being called to throw away any of my own personal presumptions and be that light in the darkness that I could have desperately used as a child. And so I committed to that. From then on, every interview I did, my social media posts, I would not only let the world know that I was a gay man who loved the outdoors, because apparently that's a stereotype we're still working to fix, but I would also let them know not only was I a pastor's son, but I was a practicing Christian, so that people around the world who heard this story because of the world records that gained the attention could see a new type of LGBT role model that they had never seen before. Now, because God has a really good sense of humor, right as I heard this call, I started running out of money. And I thought, cool, God, okay, I know the story of Job. I know how this works, like, trials, I get it, okay. But I don't know how I'm going to stay on the road. It's been 9 months and nothing has worked as I thought. Except right around the same time, I got a phone call from a friend who had been a pastor in D.C. and now worked in Florida. And he said, Micah, I know soon you're coming to Florida to visit our parks. And he knew me from my singing job, and he said, there is no way you are leaving this state without singing at my church on some Sunday morning. And he said, and I know you're struggling right now, so we're gonna put out a basket, and we're gonna make you sing for your supper, but we are gonna get you to the next park. So I show up Sunday morning, ready to sing, and the pastor comes to me and says, so the accompanist was out late partying last night and hasn't shown up. That would never happen here, right? Never. No. Do you think you could just sing along to your YouTube videos that you sent me with song options? Yeah, I suppose. So I go up and they project me singing onto the projection screen, and I'm sitting here singing thinking, what's the next word? What? Don't mess up, because they'll all know. And I make it through that first song, and I go sit down, and they're doing the first reading, and the pastor comes up to me, and he said, oh, great job. So for the sermon today, I'm going to go up and speak a little bit, and then I'm going to introduce you and let you give the sermon. I'm sorry, what? I missed. I was listening to the reading. What? Yeah. Go up and tell them about your journey and about growing up in the church and tie it into the gospel somehow. You'll be great. And I'm thinking back to the 20-some years I watched my dad have pastoral interns and about wet themselves the first time they had to preach. But knowing that they had had 2 years of seminary, before that moment. And I'm thinking, number one, are you crazy? Number two, you were out with the accompanist last night, weren't you? And you didn't write a sermon, and you're going to look scot-free while this traveling vagabond takes all the heat. I see how it is. Okay, I got you, friend. Thanks. But that day I walked up to the pulpit, and the Holy Spirit earned overtime. And I shared my story much like I've shared with you today. And after the service, people came up to me crying. And they said, my daughter's a lesbian. My uncle's transgender. Or I'm gay. And I never thought I'd hear those words and my story from the pulpit. Around the same time, that pastor, after the service, called another pastor in town and said, hey, this friend of mine's in town, he can sing and he can preach too. Do you want a preacher next week? And they said, yeah. So I went to that church. And then that pastor called someone in Tampa, who called someone in New Orleans, who called someone in Texas. And long story short, since that first Sunday in January of 2017 to today, more or less every week I have been in a different church across our country, singing for my supper and sharing a message of hope and inclusion for LGBT Christians in churches. Now, some of the churches that invite me to speak are open and affirming and use it as an opportunity to advertise that stance to the community and let others know that maybe if their church doesn't accept them as they are and celebrate them, that there is a church, hopefully, in their town that does. And as I preach, they practically have a giant rainbow flag that they're carrying like a giant football M or something. I've also been at churches where the pastor reaches out to me and says, so myself and my congregation are in different places, but I'd love for you to come talk about this so I don't have to. And we're going to be voting at some point in this year on if we'll allow same-sex weddings in our chapel, and I really need them to have a face to think of when they cast that ballot. No pressure, no pressure. And perhaps my favorite church that I in the state of my birth, South Dakota, which at the time did not have a single reconciling Lutheran, open and affirming to LGBT people church in the entire state. And before the service, the pastor, who I think let me come speak because he knew my dad, basically, said, I have a lesbian sister that I have never told my congregation about. But I'm retiring at the end of this year, so you just go out there and say whatever you want. And so no matter what the church has been, where they are on this spectrum of acceptance, it has been such an honor and a privilege to get to preach this message and to say those words and those stories that have not been heard in so many churches. And so if it is on your heart, if you'd like to support this ministry and allow this journey to keep sharing this message and to keep spreading this message to the faith community, as Pastor mentioned, there is a box in the back, and you may do so if you would like to today. If you would like to come along on the rest of the journey with me, the van is not that big. However, there are cards out there that have my social media accounts, they have my website, they have my email. You can more or less see the entirety of America from the smartphone in your palm. So I invite you to join the journey digitally if you'd like to. And after the service, I'll be outside chatting with you. If you have any questions, whether it's about the national parks, being a male soprano, living in a van, or being an LGBT Christian, I would love to be here as a resource for you to chat more. But if there's one thing I can leave you with today, it's a gospel message that I have discovered during these past 2.5 years on the road. You see, I started this journey. 2016 was not only the year that I turned 30, but was also a very contentious election for America. And as I drove around the country before, during, and after the election, as I would do media stories, I would look at the one next to me in the newspaper, before me on the news, and it was all about how, we are from red states and we're from blue states, and we are rural and urban and rich and poor and black and white, and we are just so different as a country, and there's no way we'll ever get along. In fact, every day we become more separated because we're so different, which is really awkward, because as I go to those red states, as I go to those blue states and those rural and those urban, as I go to all those places and meet people, that's not the experience that I have. Everyone does things for different reasons, but what I realized as I talked to people and I heard about their lives and their decisions and their choices was that every single person, every decision they made, every word they spoke, every breath they took, all came back to one shared motivation. With every action that anyone did, it all came back to a root desire that said, I want to be loved, and I want to love others in return. Now, the theologian in me says that this is mankind reaching out for God's love and wanting to receive God's love in return. And so, as we go from God's house today out into a world that is love hungry, I think it's important to look at the example that God has provided us for how to create that heaven on earth that we're called to do as Christians. I think back to the biblical stories of my youth, and I remember hearing one about a woman at a well. A woman who, unlike the other ladies who likely went as a group to collect water for the community, as that was a task of the time, this woman went by herself, probably because whether it's 2018 or 2,000 years ago, people like to talk. And people probably gossiped about her multiple past husbands and said all sorts of manner of things against her. And so it's probably easier just to go when no one else is around so I don't have to confront them. Except one day this dude, Jesus, shows up. Comes to this woman and doesn't treat her based on her worldly culture of the day, but comes to her, treats her, and loves her as a child of God, despite what the popular Times said about her. In another part of the gospel, John 9, 1 through 41, we see Jesus and his followers come upon a blind man, a man who had been blind since birth. And they say, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Because at the time it was believed that people weren't blind because of scientific reasons we know today, but that either their parents had sinned or they had sinned, and this was God punishing them. And so if we interact with that blind man, if we touch him, we might catch that sin and catch that blindness. And yet, Jesus goes up and touches the blind man, treating him as a child of God like no one else had. Perhaps in the strongest example of all, in his most vulnerable moment, hanging on the cross, being crucified, Jesus looks to his side and does not see what the world had titled a criminal, but sees a child of God and says, got a spot reserved for you in heaven, I'll see you there. And so my challenge to us today, myself included, is that as we leave God's house and go out into the world, that we take that example of God with us. And as we meet people who are different races than us, different genders, different sexual orientations, differently physically abled, differently mentally abled, no matter who we encounter and what our 2018 culture has labeled them, that we see them not as those labels, but as children of God, deserving of that love that we all desire. Now, if you're hearing this message today and you say, but Micah, I am that person, I am that weird one. I'm not the cool kid at school. I'm not as smart as my coworkers. I'm not as brave as my siblings. I have different mental abilities, different physical abilities. I am a minority sexual orientation or race or immigration status or whatever it is that our culture has said makes you unworthy. Take heart in the gospel. Because when the people say, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Jesus replies, hold up, hold up, hold up. That's direct translation from Greek and Hebrew. Jesus says, neither this man nor his parents sinned. This man was made blind so that God's works might be revealed in him. And so maybe you're the closeted son of a well-known minister and thinking to yourself, God, haven't I been the perfect pastor's son? Didn't I do everything right? Why are you afflicting me with this gayness? And then one day realizing that maybe God needed you to be gay so that those who said being gay was the result of a horrible father or a lack of church life or a bad faith example would have to look at a pastor that they know and respect and have their world flipped upside down. Whatever part of you feels like it's not enough, it's not perfect, remember that Jesus has shown us not only are our differences holy, but it's our differences that allow God's works to be revealed in this world. And so usually I would finish my sermon with an amen, but because I'm here to sing for you today, we're going to do something a little different. And I'm going to follow up with a musical amen. And the song that I'm going to sing for you comes from a movie musical by the name of Camp. Has anyone seen it? Anybody know what I'm talking about? Well, if you have some time later today, I think it's on Netflix, and you can go watch it. And when you get to this song, I want you to turn to the person next to you and say, well, they didn't sing that as good as that guy in church today. Netflix, just going downhill. But the point in the show where this song is sung comes towards the end, and it's sung by a character who, the whole movie is based around musical theater camp. And so she really wanted to go to musical theater camp for the summer, and her parents wanted her to go to fat camp. And so the compromise that they made was that she could go to musical theater camp if they could have her jaw wired shut for the summer so she could only have liquid food. And yet her parents come to the final camp talent show, and she walks out on stage, spotlight, front and center, Aretha Franklin, and she opens her mouth, and there are no wires there. And so as you listen to the lyrics of this song today, I invite you to reflect on them and how they pertain to your own life. And remember that no matter what the world has told you about yourself and what you have to be because our popular culture has deemed it, to remember not only who you are, but most importantly, whose you are.
It is such a gift to be here with Mikah. Thank you all for being here. And as we continue on, you may be seated. But we do want to raise up those who are in our midst, who are in need of prayer. So will you join me in the spirit of prayer? Because today we pray that his story might be the end of those who go through spiritual trauma, to come out to their families. May we be strong enough to hold within our community, within our hearts, those who need our support to be themselves. Today we ask for prayers for the work we do together, for the work of healing that is needed in this world, for those who need to feel safe. And so we ask for prayers for a friend who struggles to feel safe in her own home, for teens and young adults as they face challenges in life, for a couple trying to lay down the foundation of a new relationship, and for those who are dealing with depression. For Trina, that she has the strength and comfort that she needs in her battle with cancer. For a grandma and a mom who started chemotherapy. For healing and quick recovery for Dorothy after major surgery. For brother-in-laws struggling with brain infection. For Emmett, that he grow and meet the milestones he needs. For Tammy, who's dealing with depression. And for Dawn. For all those in our hearts, today we pray that we can be counted on, that we can be the people standing ready to receive those in need, that we're ready to listen to the voices amongst us. For these things we pray this day, that God's vision of wholeness and love in this love-hungry world be found. Amen.
And amen. My friends, the pancakes are getting hard, so we're going to move along a little bit here, but we do want to offer up a blessing for you. We're going to do our prayer of self-dedication. The band is going to play and sing us out of here. You're welcome to sing along with them or go join us for our meal. I'm going to invite you to please rise, though, as we get ready to go from this place, because this is our church. Others will feel welcomed. It will do a great work. It will make generous gifts to many causes.
If I am a giver of my time, talents, and treasure.
It will be a sanctuary for social justice and for peace.
If I advocate for marginalized communities and practice peace in every setting of my life.
It will be a church that embraces all, that builds community, that grows faith and transforms lives.
If I make it what it is, practice these things.
Therefore, with the grace of God, we will be a safe and inclusive church living God's radical message.
And I shall dedicate myself to being all the things I want my church to be.
Amen. Before we leave and before we sing, I want to give thanks one more time for our friend Mikah Meyer. Micah?